Welcome back. In this part, we're going over the strength to the death. This is part two of a walk through the tarot. Right now, we're focusing on the Major Arcana. So like I said, we're going from strength to death. Before we get into these cards, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you can follow along with this series. In the last part, we walked through the beginning of the journey, and now we're moving into the part of tarot where things really start to deepen. This is where you're tested. This is where things are stretched. And this is where we transform. So, all right, let's continue. We start part two with the strength card. Upright, this brings us inner strength, patience, but something that I really think this card has a key aspect for is emotional control. Now, in reversed, this card can bring messages of self doubt, low confidence, or feeling overwhelmed. In real life, this looks like staying calm under pressure and handling things with patience, giving yourself grace. Reversed, this looks like reacting emotionally, feeling insecure, or not trusting yourself. Think of those times that you really felt pushed, but you found that inner strength, that courage. You had patience to overcome the situation. You chose self control over an emotional impulse, to have the conviction, the resilience. Now, what about those times that the low confidence and the insecurity kind of overwhelmed? You didn't feel like you had very much control over the situation. You felt weak and there was a lot of self-doubt. Here's where I'm going to ask you to quiet your mind and check in with your emotions while I read this statement. You're being called to lead with patience and inner calm. True strength comes from gentle control, not force. Take a breath. Notice that steady, controlled energy. Okay, we're going to shift this energy just a little bit. Take a deep breath while I read this following statement. You may be doubting your inner strength or letting emotions take control instead of guiding them. Did you notice where that felt different? Okay, now it's time to take some deep breaths and sit with the energy of this card for just a moment. And now we move on to the Hermit. This is introspection, solitude, and inner guidance. In reverse, this can be isolation, avoidance, or feeling disconnected. Real life examples of this card can look like taking time alone to reflect and figure things out. In reverse, it could look like withdrawing too much or avoiding what really needs your attention. Think about those times that you allowed yourself to stay in instead of going out with the hustle and bustle. When you took care of yourself, nurtured, it was a little bit of prudence to withdraw, but at the same time, it gave you reflection and hopefully you found some inner guidance. This is the time to meditate, to do the soul searching, and to find that inner wisdom. Now, think about those times that you did withdraw yourself from those social situations, or you withdrew from people who were close to you in a way of isolating from that human connection. Not for anything that's going to bring you wisdom, but for the cutoff of not being able to have the emotional maturity, or it's about avoidance. It's getting comfortable with loneliness, even though you know it's leading to disconnection. And now it's time for that quiet emotional check in. Take a deep breath and quiet your mind while I read this statement. Being called to pull back and reflect. There's clarity waiting in the quiet. Immerse yourself in that quiet, reflective space. All right, take another deep breath as we shift the energy. Clear your mind and tap into your emotions as I read this next statement. You may be isolating too much or avoiding the stillness that could bring the clarity. Notice how the energy feels different. Both energies are withdrawn, but one is in more of a reflection and the other is more of an avoidance. When you're reading, you can really feel the difference of these energies in association to this card. Let's sit, take some deep breaths, and just hold the energy of this card for a moment. All right. When you're ready, we move forward to the Wheel of Fortune. This is change, cycles, and movement. Reversed, this can be delays, resistance to change, and feeling stuck in a cycle. In real life, this card looks like shifting or changing direction, sometimes unexpectedly. In reversal, this card looks like things not moving. It's repeating the same tired patterns. So think about those times where you just felt luck or the winds shift in your direction, empowered. There was movement. Also, think about those times that you just felt stuck in the mud. When you felt the resistance, wanting so much to change your patterns, but not knowing how to shift the gear. Now, quiet your mind and check in with your emotions while I read this statement. Things are shifting in your favor. Trust the timing. You're entering into a new cycle. Take a deep breath and notice the sense of movement. Okay, now release that and take another deep breath while I read this statement. You may feel stuck in a cycle or resisting a change that's trying to happen. Notice where that feels blocked or slowed. Now, it's time to just sit with the energy of this card for a moment. And we move forward with justice. This is balance, truth, and accountability. Reversal, this can be imbalance, unfairness, or avoiding responsibility. Real life association with this card looks like making fair decisions or seeing things clearly. Reversal, this looks like things feeling unjust or just not taking accountability. Think about those times where your energy knew the balance and the fairness, the cause and effect, and taking accountability. Also, notice those times where your energy felt dishonest when there was an imbalance. You knew that you were bringing in an unfairness or a bias of the situation. Okay, let's quiet the mind and check in with your emotions while I read this statement. You're being called to face the truth, what's fair, what's right, and what needs to be made balanced. As you take that next deep breath in, feel that sense of clarity and balance. Okay, allow the energy to shift while I read this next statement. Something is out of balance. Truth may be avoided or accountability is being denied. Notice the difference in that energy. All right, go ahead and take some more deep breaths and sit with the energy of this card for a moment. Let's keep going. It's time to move on to the hangman. This is pause, surrender, and seeing things differently. In reverse, this can be resistance, stagnation, or refusing to let go. In real life, this looks like taking a step back and allowing things to unfold. Reversal, this looks like feeling stuck but not willing to shift your perspective. Okay, now just check in with yourself and think about those times that pausing for a moment helped you gain the awareness that letting go of being right or your perspective and being willing to see things from a different point of view. Now, think about the times that you were resistant to change. When you spent your time wasting the day rather than being willing to change or the avoidance of that change, the lack of perspection and total stagnation of the situation. Now, quiet your mind, check in with your emotions while I read this statement. You're being asked to pause and see things differently. Surrender brings clarity. And as you take your next breath in, notice the stillness of this card. Okay, shifting that energy, I want you to take another deep breath and check in with your emotions while I read this statement. You may be resisting the pause or refusing to see what needs to shift. And as you take your next breath in, notice where that feels tense or resistant. All right, now let that breath out. Sit and take a few more breaths and just be with the energy of this card for a moment. And now we'll move on. It's time for the inevitable, the death card. This is endings, transformation, and letting go. In reverse, this can be resistance to change or holding on to something that's already ended. In real life, this looks like closing one chapter so something new can begin. Reversal on this in real life is going to look like avoiding an ending or struggling to release something that has already gone. So think about those times where the writing was on the wall. You knew it was time for that chapter to be over. You understood the transformation that you were going through, the transition and the discovery of self. Also, think about those times that you held on for way too long when you got rope burn because you wouldn't let go of the fight, of trying to keep something. It leads to a stagnation and depression of sorts. It's the delayed transition that we know is inevitable. Now, quiet your mind and take a deep breath. Let's check in with your emotions while I read this statement. Endings are making space for transformation. Something must close for something new to begin. As you take your next breath in, feel that sense of release. Okay. While you keep breathing, it's time to shift energy just a little bit and allow yourself to feel this statement. You may be holding on to something that's already over, resisting the change that's trying to happen. And as you take your next breath in, notice where the energy feels heavy or stuck. Okay, exhale and release that energy. Time to breathe a little bit more, a couple more deep breaths, and just sit with the energy of this card. All right. We started on the strength card and we worked through the death. And this is where the journey starts to shift in the Major Arcana. This part of tarot asks you to slow down, reflect, and let things change. Take a moment and notice which card stayed with you a little bit longer than the rest. That's usually where something is ready to move or transform. And at this point, I'm going to ask you if you enjoyed watching this, please like and subscribe. If you want to leave some feedback, go ahead and put it in the comments. I will be making another video before too long and posting it. It will be from temperance to the world. So we'll see you then. Thanks for watching.